Hi everyone, I hope you got on okay with the blind tasting pack. Here we are, time to go through the answers. So wine number one, if we look at our intensity and our appearance and color on this, we will notice that this wine is medium or deep gold. I'd probably say we could get away with deep gold here, but if you put medium, that's all good. Light or pale would be like your Pinot Grigio, almost like looking through it's like water. And again, that color, if it had like green hues in it, we could get away with calling it lemon. But this is definitely gold. When we move on to the aroma intensity, so I'm starting at about chest height, I can smell stuff pretty much straight away. This is quite an aromatic style of wine. In terms of our fruit characteristics, I think that the main things that stand out here are stone fruit and tropical fruit. So there is lots of peachiness, lots of banana, lots of mango. Moving on to secondary aromas, I would say that there is also really clear signs of oak aging in here. We kind of could maybe take a guess at that based on the color, but there's a real vanilla, buttery, toasty characteristic, which is classic signs of oak. No obvious signs of age, but white wine age is a bit of a harder thing to come by. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the taste of this. And normally when we do the taste, I kind of park sweetness because that's going to be obvious or less obvious. But I think I always look at acidity, first of all. How much does this wine make our mouth water? So this is a nice refreshing wine, but it's about a medium. If you wanted a good example of high acidity, you would look for something like a Pinot Grigio, maybe a Riesling. But we've got medium acidity. It's dry. We don't need to worry about tannin. Medium alcohol. I'm not getting a noticeable hit of either high or lack of for low alcohol. Our body for this is quite a weighty, substantial style wine, we could say. I think we could get away with calling that full-bodied. A large glass of that, drunk very, very quickly, would be a challenging thing. We'd struggle on through. But for the flavor characteristics, a lot of what we got on the nose is still there. So really nice kind of peachy, nectarine notes, pineapple, mango, very exotic and rich. I'd even go as far to say as the style of fruit is leading towards that really ripe flavors. Notes of secondary oak, so we've got things like vanilla, toast, butter. There's almost like a creamy richness to it, which could be from malolactic conversion, if we want to get super geeky about that. When we look at the final part, our assessment of quality, we've got to think about the finish. So long finish. Flavors are still going and going and going. This wine has balance, for sure. It definitely has length, it definitely has intensity, and it definitely has complexity. We'd rate this wine as outstanding. When it comes to guessing what this wine could be, the color and the use of oak kind of puts us down a certain route. So we can say that we're probably not in Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Grigio or Riesling territory. We could be looking at something like a Chenin Blanc. We could be looking at a Chardonnay. We could maybe be looking at a Viognier, but probably not. If you got that far, I think you've done really, really well. If you got to the point where you went, do you know what? I think this is probably a Chardonnay. This sounds like warm climate Chardonnay with the stone fruits and the exotic fruit. You have done really well. And this is a Chardonnay. Where it comes from, I mean, you could have put a lot of places and been right in a way. You know what I mean? Like descriptor-wise, this could describe a Chardonnay from Australia or South Africa, maybe even California, could describe a Burgundy. So I think if you've managed to get all the way down to Chardonnay, you've done an excellent job. This is actually a Burgundy. This is 2020 Haute Côte de Beaune by Prosper Maufoux. It's one we stock in the shop at the moment, and it's a really good example of Burgundy without being wildly, wildly expensive. I think we retail this at 36 a bottle. But as I said, if you could discount some of the fresher aromatic grape varieties, good. If you got to Chardonnay, great. If you were brave enough to put a couple of options and Burgundy was one of them, even better. Let's move on to wine number 2. For wine number 2, our appearance is quite pale, so we should be able to see through the wine quite easily. If we were to tilt the wine at 45 degrees and have like a bit of paper underneath, you'd probably be able to read the paper. Color-wise on this is still ruby. Purple will also always kind of blue hues through it, and we've not quite started to see any of the garnet colors. That's an interesting thing to some degree because blue is for very, very young style wines and typically darker grape varieties, and garnet is a sign of normally quite a lot of age or potentially a lot of oak aging. So that color is an interesting clue, I think, to what we've got. Aroma characteristics. It's probably about medium intensity. So I always think chin height is about medium. And for those characteristics themselves, when we think of red wine, we either think about black fruit or we think about red fruit. And this is more in that red fruit camp. It's more cherry, it's more strawberry, a little bit of maybe red plum, but it's a little bit fresher in comparison to black fruit. That's quite interesting because in the red grape varieties, a lot of our red grape varieties lean towards black fruit. There's only a few that go red fruit. So that's kind of removed some grape varieties from the equation. I would also say there's really subtle signs of oak here. Comes across a little bit more kind of spicy and clove in comparison to the white wine we tried earlier. There's also maybe subtle signs of like development from age. So like a little bit of earthiness, dried leaf character would be a good way to describe it. Basically, the wine doesn't come across as super, super fruity. It comes across a lot more complex in style. Taste-wise, we're going to skip sweetness because this is dry, and we're going to focus on acid and tannin. So we have high acid, low level of tannin. It's really refreshing, but I can only feel the tannin on my front 2 teeth here. Now again, red fruit, high acid, low tannin is not that common. And so we've really started to narrow down the things that it could be here. Alcohol, again, medium. There's no noticeable high or low signs of alcohol. Our body is relatively light for red wine. It does have some complexity, so if medium minus existed as an option, I'd put that, but without that, we'll go for low. Our flavor characteristics are kind of as we described. Red fruit, maybe leaning a bit more towards like cranberry and raspberry, strawberry, but still cherry and plum. Spiciness from oak, clovey and peppery, a bit more than vanilla and coconut. Little sign of kind of leafiness from age, as we said, dried leaves. And finally, the finish. Again, the finish on here is quite long, especially for something that is, it's not super intensely flavoured, but it's very complexly flavoured, would be the best way to describe it. Moving on to our assessment of quality. This wine is balanced with length. It definitely has complexity. You could maybe say that this wine only gets a half point for its intensity of flavour. And so we could say that this is either a very good or an outstanding wine. If it was a WSET exam, you could argue each way. In terms of guessing what this could be, as I've said, red fruit, high acid, low tannin really narrows our lens down. We can get rid of a lot of grape varieties, and largely what we end up left with is Pinot Noir, Gamay, which is what they used to make Beaujolais, or potentially Grenache in the right situation. But I'd argue that Grenache would have more body and weight and maybe more alcohol. So if you got down to either of those three things, you've done really, really well. It's probably not Grenache, as I said, and so if we look at Gamay and we look at Pinot Noir, generally speaking, this level of complexity doesn't come from Beaujolais. And so we've got a Pinot Noir. Once you get down to Pinot Noir, again, Burgundy would be your classic choice to go for. But I could easily see examples of this wine existing in New Zealand or even South Africa, possibly. This is a red Burgundy. It's a good one as well. Spoiled you guys. So this is a 2021 Beaune Premier Cru. And again, looking for a really classic example of red Burgundy for you. Let's move on to wine number 3. Wine number 3, appearance of this, it's definitely deeper than the Burgundy we were just on. We would probably still go with medium, and we would still stick with ruby in colour. In terms of the aroma intensity, it's quite aromatic. I can smell it pretty much straight away. And again, if we're thinking about red fruit and black fruit, this falls more into the black fruit category. Really black currant, bramble, black plum. There is notable signs of oak here. With the Pinot Noir previously, I said that the oak was very kind of clovey and peppery. This is much more like vanilla and coconut, which is a sign potentially of American oak over French oak. I don't get any noticeable signs of age with this wine. It's much more upfront primary fruit and secondary oak style. It doesn't necessarily mean that the wine isn't aged, but it just means on its kind of journey of development, we're not quite tipping over to where those complexities start to make appearance. When we move on to taste, we've got acid, we've got tannin. Again, this is a dry style of wine. So this time we have high acid. Again, it's really refreshing, but we've got high tannin. I can feel it all the way on the back of my teeth here. If, when you were filling this out, you went medium acid and medium tannin, that's really a common thing. And basically, because this wine is balanced, the high and high kind of cancel each other out. And so we naturally go, oh, well, it seems nice and balanced. It must be medium. But if we did the old chin on the chest trick for acidity, and if we make sure we get the wine to the back of our mouth, we can feel those tannins all the way back here. So this is high acid, high tannin. I feel that this is quite punchy. I would be quite happy to say this will fall into the high alcohol category. And again, this is quite full-bodied in style. Lovely, but to drink a large glass of this very quickly wouldn't be as nice as other things. For our flavor characteristics, yeah, I mean, that black fruit is still definitely there. What I would say is that the black fruit feels really ripe. It's not quite jammy, but it's going towards that. This tastes a bit more like Ribena than it does black currants. That will give me a clue that it's possibly from a hotter climate. Kind of sweet, coconutty vanilla. Again, as I said, that's American oak coming through, and this wine has quite a long finish. Definitely got balance, definitely got length, definitely got intensity. I'd argue it could be maybe a bit more complex. So again, we could say that this is either very good or outstanding. I would argue that out of the 3 wines we've got, the last one here is probably the one that has the most option to be a lot of other things. Black fruit characteristics with high levels of tannin could be Cab Sauv, Syrah, Malbec, could be lots of things. And so this is a really good example of classic Cab Sauv. If you got that, you smashed it, well done. But if you put any of those other things I mentioned, that's totally logical. So we have a wine that is 100% Cab Sauv. Now again, if you put something like a Bordeaux, which is a Cab Sauv blend, that makes a load of sense here. In terms of whereabout in the world we would find a nice, big, fruit-focused Cab Sauv, honest answers, you could have put so many places. This could, in theory, come from Australia, South Africa, Napa, somewhere in South America like Chile. This particular version is Stellenbosch, South Africa. So a classic New World Cab Sauv by Kiermont. And again, as I said, it's 15% alcohol, so it is that bigger, punchier style. But this blind tasting game is hard, and as I said, there are so many other things that this could easily have identified as with the other 2 as well. So I hope you found the blind tasting fun. If you'd like to do this again, let me know, and I can start preparing another set of packs for people.